So the Chiefs have a bunch of decisions to make here soon regarding 20 players set to hit free agency. On top of that, there's weaknesses to fill from talent that's currently not on this roster. The GOAT tight end might potentially be contemplating retirement, and several key defenders could find themselves moving on as well. So I've got to talk about that, the depleted wide receiver room, and more. But first, how about those? All right, first up, starting tomorrow, teams may designate the franchise tag on one player of their team if they would like to. You don't have to, but one player can be franchise tagged. And this doesn't have to happen tomorrow either. They do have until March 4th to slap that franchise tag on, but starting tomorrow, they could. So you've got to keep an eye on that with every team, but in particular with the Chiefs, you're going to be looking at Trey Smith being the most likely candidate the Chiefs could franchise tag. And I don't mean to speak disrespectfully or anything when I say slap the tag on him. It's just something you can do to keep somebody from walking into free agency or tag and trade like they did with L'Jarius Sneed. There's definitely a few options, and I'm not even saying they will for sure franchise tag Trey Smith, as it's going to cost them around $25 million to do so, and so they would definitely need more cap space. They have around $5.3 million at the moment. I will share later on in this video how they could pretty easily get more cap space available, and they are definitely going to utilize some of those tactics to do so. But right now, $5.3 million is 24th in the NFL among all teams, so it's not a ton of space at this point in time. Now, the reason why Trey Smith would cost so much to franchise tag, I talked about this in much more depth in Friday's video if you haven't seen it, but it's because they use the top 5 highest paid salaries of any player along the entire O-line, not just interior. So tackles are included, and that raises that number up quite a bit. The highest paid guard in the NFL, for example, from an APY, average per year standpoint, is Landon Dickerson of the Eagles, and that's $21 million per year. So that's at least $4 more million to franchise tag Trey Smith. But I would assume Trey Smith is going to become the next highest paid guard in the NFL. It's not going to hit $25 million per year. Okay, that's insane, but it is going to be a lot of money. Now, KC could very well opt to let him walk and instead use resources on a left tackle, potentially. You can only pay so many people along the offensive line after all at the end of the day, and the combined cap hit this season for the Chiefs O-line, just amongst their starters, is already $64.9 million. That's just for Jawan Taylor, Joe Thuney, and Creed Humphrey. I would anticipate that these cap hits won't remain this high for all three of them, as Joe Thuney could get something worked out via an extension of some sort. It would at least make sense considering how high of a level he's playing at, even at the age of 33 years old. Thuney is actually the second oldest player on the team outside of Travis Kelce, though if they do re-sign long snapper James Winchester, he's currently a free agent, he would then be behind Kelce, and Joe Thuney would be third. Either way, I say all that to say we will know the moves of the Chiefs here very soon in regards to that franchise tag and Trey Smith. It's not going to be Nick Bolton, because franchise tagging Nick Bolton at the linebacker spot would be $27 million. No thank you. We'll get to Nick Bolton though, but the Chiefs have a few options. I shared about it earlier with Trey Smith. You could just find the money to tag him as a placeholder for a long-term deal to get done. They would have until July 15th to do so, or you tag him so he just can't walk into free agency and try to get some draft capital out of him, or you just let him walk into free agency and maybe you get a third-round compensatory pick for him. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, though there's a real possibility Trey Smith just walks and KC focuses on a replacement for Trey Smith either in-house, maybe Hunter Norzad or Kingsley Suamataia, or the draft. I talked about some free agent possibilities the Chiefs could target in Friday's video if you want to check that out, but a few of them are up here on the screen. Those are some guys I discussed in that video if you just want a quick glance. Now, the O-line is far from the only thing the Chiefs will need to address in free agency, because KC currently has 20 unrestricted free agents, including some pretty big pieces on defense and a wide receiver room that could look a lot different outside of two main guys next year. So from here, I need to talk about all that and more. But first, most of you, like me, live very busy lives, and the time that it takes to prep fresh meals, especially for lunch, is not the most convenient thing in the world. Well, that's why the sponsor of today's video, Factor, not only takes the stress out of meal planning, but allows you to skip the grocery store's prep work and cooking fatigue and sets you up for success. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your door, and these chef-crafted meals are not only delicious, but they are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. That's perfect for me because the faster I can get upstairs and eat a quality lunch, the more time and energy I have to make content for all of you. It also helps that there's over 35 meals to choose from each week, like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie, and also more than 60 add-ons, from breakfast to cold-pressed juices like this one, pineapple, turmeric, basil, and so much more. I opted for the Protein Plus meals this go-around because each meal features 30 grams of protein or more, and the loaded bacon shredded chicken was my favorite by far, but the dill-crusted chicken and cheddar broccoli grits, as well as the Tuscan-style pork chop, were right up there as well. In fact, it was all good, which is why I've been using Factor for nearly 2 years now, and if you want to eliminate the hassle of prepping, cooking, or cleaning up and enjoy great meals like these, head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50HBTC to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50HBTC at Factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Alright, so regarding the Chiefs defense, safety Justin Reid, defensive end Charles Omenihu, and linebacker Nick Bolton are three of the biggest guys slated to hit free agency. But Mike Pennell, Turk Wharton, and Derek Nottie are also on the list and obviously played an important role in their own right along the defensive line. Justin Reid is 28 years old and will undoubtedly want another 3-ish year deal. I mean, why the heck not if you're him? He's played pretty good ball, but it's worth noting that KC let Tyrann Mathieu walk after his contract was up around a similar age. I think he was about a year older, but the same principle still applies. Now, Justin Reid's last deal, it was 3 years, $31.5 million, which is about $10.5 million average per year, and that has him just outside of the top 10 highest paid safeties. He's definitely been solid for the team in his time here and has stayed pretty healthy, which is another positive, playing in nearly every single regular season and playoff game over the last 3 years. I definitely wouldn't mind seeing him back, but I understand the age aspect of things, and if the coaching staff believes maybe Jaden Hicks might be able to step up into a bigger role next year, I completely understand that quote-unquote gamble because that man showed some awesome flashes during his rookie year. Then outside of Justin Reid, Nick Bolton is probably the biggest what the heck do you do with that guy on defense because of how big of a role he's played. Bolton's a bigger struggle to me because while he's been a fantastic piece of the defense, great against the run, has a very high Q in calling the defense as the Mike linebacker, his weakness is in coverage, and the lack of top speed definitely shows up when he's trying to chase people to the outside. More times than not, they do beat him if they get the angle on him. He did have some injuries during his time here, mainly in 2023 where he played roughly just half the season, but he bounced back this past year and played in most of them. He's made some very clutch plays during his time here for the Chiefs, don't get me wrong. One that immediately stands out being that tackle he made for a loss against the Falcons end game of the fourth quarter to force the turnover on downs and help give the Chiefs the win. Per Spot Track, Nick Bolton's market value is around $12 million per year. He could even get more than that, 14, 15, up to $16 million per year, which is obviously just a rough estimate, but that would put him around top 5 in APY among all linebackers. Spags has done nothing but praise Bolton, crediting him as a big key piece of this defense, but the good news here is Drue Tranquill is under contract through 2026 at half the price of his $12 million market value. $6.3 million per year is what the Chiefs have Drue Tranquill for. And when Bolton missed half of the 2023 season, it was Drue Tranquill who helped fill in as the Mike linebacker. So if KC is unable to get a long-term deal done with Bolton, instead letting him walk into free agency like Trey Smith, they do have a guy that they could instantly fill that role in Drue Tranquill. Maybe then Leo Chanel's role increases in 2025. I mean, his RAS is off the charts. He blocked 2 field goals. We would love to see him more on the field if possible. And of course, there's also the upcoming draft. Defensive end Charles Omenihu is next up that I want to talk about. I would love for the Chiefs to bring him back. I know he's going to want as much money as humanly possible as he is reaching his upper 20s. It's just a tough sell for some teams because he's coming off of that ACL tear, didn't play a full season, and some of these top paid defensive end / edge rushers are making $22 million or more per year. I definitely don't think he gets that considering the ACL injury he recovered from, but I wouldn't blame him for trying. If the Chiefs could somehow get him to something similar than what they did 2 years ago when they signed him to a 2-year, $16 million deal, then that is a no-brainer bring back move for me, even if he costs a little bit more than that from an APY standpoint. The D-line is going to be something worth watching though, because you need pieces around Chris Jones. He can't do it all. And then we saw when he left the game in the Super Bowl, the pass rush kind of disappeared, and that is very disheartening. Obviously, they're paying Chris Jones as much money as they are because he is the best in the business and a game changer, but you've got to have some other guys step up, and Charles Omenihu being back in the line, or in the rotation of the D-line rather, is an important piece to me and is somebody I would love to see back if possible. Then I also hope FAU steps up, George Karlaftis keeps balling out, and then we've just got to keep adding to that room. Now for the offense, outside of the offensive line, of course, we've talked about that in pretty good detail in the last couple of videos. Something that needs to be looked at is the wide receiver room. The Chiefs currently have 5 wide receivers slated to hit free agency, with those being DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Justin Watson, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Mecole Hardman. That basically leaves Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy as the main 2 under contract next year, which is a great 1-2 punch considering how good Rice was looking pre-injury and how fantastic Xavier Worthy was looking like at the end of the season. Nico Remigio is also under contract for less than $1 million and will most likely make the roster as the team's returner and a depth piece on offense. So there's 3. The 4th could, in theory, be Sky Moore. He's on the last year of his rookie deal, but I'm not so sure he remains on the roster come cutdown day. I mean, do they really need to try and give this man one more year to see how he does? He had 3 targets for 0 catches and 0 yards last season, ending the back half of the season on IR due to a core muscle injury that required surgery. His best season was actually his rookie year, but honestly, 2022 and 2023 were both very similar. 21, 22 catches for around 250 yards. I mean, Nico Remigio could do that. So I think the Sky Moore project should, in theory, be over. There's also a few other receivers on the 90-man roster at the moment. They signed a reserve future contract last week, and those are Jason Brownlee, Justin Ross, and Tyquan Thornton, but who knows if these guys will actually make the 53, and even if they did, would they be a top, dependable, reliable target for Patrick Mahomes, especially considering Rice is gonna likely start the season suspended 4-6-ish games. I have no idea how much, but he's probably starting the season suspended. You need at least one more solid wideout that Mahomes trusts, especially if injuries happen, which we saw happen all over both sides of the football for the Chiefs last year. And in spite of that, they overcame, made it to the Super Bowl. It was great, but then they got curb stomped. I don't want to talk about it. I have PTSD from Super Bowl 59. But you need at least one more solid wideout, and that's why I think it makes sense to try and bring back Marquise Hollywood Brown. Why the heck not? The fact that he was injured most of the year did not help his stock, definitely didn't rise, and although he's kind of aging, he's still only 28 years old by the start of the season, so why not try to bring him back for a couple more years? I mean, Casey signed him to a 1-year, $7 million deal last offseason, and I think you could potentially get him back for around that average per year, maybe 2 years, 18-ish million, give or take $1 million or $2 million each way. It's at least worth a try, in my opinion. He fits a good role on this offense, and combine him with a healthy Rice and Worthy, that's a great wide receiver trio, in my opinion. So if you could bring him back for around that much, 8-ish, 9, 7, somewhere in there, $1 million per year, it almost seems like a no-brainer. Now, there are some other receivers out here slated to be free agents, such as Stephon Diggs, Tee Higgins, Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin, Darius Slayton, DJ Chark, and of course, DeAndre Hopkins. Let me start with the last first here. I'm not sure that D-Hop returns. He's going to be 33 in June, but outside of his age, he didn't really do that much in the back half of the season after the Chiefs traded for him. Since December, he averaged around 3 catches for like 20 yards a game. I mean, Mahomes loves to throw to an open receiver, and D-Hop is more of a throw it to me and I will win that battle type of guy at this point in his career. He's just not great at separating and creating separation in his routes at this point in time. Some of the others I mentioned are intriguing, but Diggs is coming off of an ACL tear. He's 31 years old. Tee Higgins will be the most sought-after wide receiver in free agency at the age of 26, probably getting a deal worth roughly $30-ish million per year if the Bengals don't franchise tag him, but they probably should franchise tag him without a second thought, even though this would be the second year in a row he's been tagged. And what do you know? Later today, it was announced that the plan for the Bengals is to franchise tag Tee Higgins, so he's probably going to be off the market. Maybe a tag and trade scenario is what ends up happening for the Bengals. That remains to be seen, but that also means the next receiver I'm going to talk about, Chris Godwin, his value in free agency just went up. Chris Godwin is intriguing for sure, but he's coming off of a dislocated ankle, and while he probably will be healthy and good to go here sooner rather than later, his market value is going to be easily $20+ million per year. That's why I go back to Hollywood Brown, because you could possibly get him on a 2-year contract for less than 1 year of Chris Godwin. But with all that being said, which wide receiver would you like to see the Chiefs bring back? Do you like the Hollywood Brown idea, or Do you like somebody else that is going to hit free agency? Let me know your thoughts on the wide receiver room and how it looks right now in the comments down below. Next, I do want to just briefly talk about the running back room. That's one to watch because Isaiah Pacheco is the only player slated to be on the roster, at least the starting roster for 2025. Perine and Hunt are both free agents, and with this being a strong running back draft class, I would think KC hopefully drafts a guy, considering Pacheco will also be on the last year of his deal in the 2025 season. Perine could make sense to bring back as the third down running back at the right price, maybe later on, and Kareem Hunt is more of a to-be-determined guy for me. He had a good season, all things considered. I mean, no offseason, no training camp, nothing, and would do better with a full offseason under his belt. He will be 30 in August, though, and that's a similar age to Perine, but the usage of a third down back compared to somebody like Hunt, who is going to be getting tons of work, it's just way different, and a third down back is not getting nearly taxed as much from a physical standpoint. Now, either of these guys could be brought back in the second or third round of free agency, i.e., after the draft. Go into the draft with Pacheco if that's what you want to do and just see where you land. Are you able to get a third down back or some running back, even as a rookie, that you think could contribute on the offensive side of the ball? I would really like it. I think you need a dynamic running back there. I think Pacheco will also be better coming off of that injury, a year removed from having surgery on his ankle. But you need another guy out there around in case of emergency and just as a 1-2 punch to offset Isaiah Pacheco. I also saw several comments on a video last week saying, who the heck says they even want Kareem Hunt back? Well, when I mentioned this last week, to be clear, I'm not saying the Chiefs want any of these players back for sure, just giving my best thoughts, discussing the roster based on needs and depending on how the draft goes. Kareem Hunt could definitely be an option to add later on if needs be. I mean, he had 728 yards in just 13 games played, and again, he did that with no training camp, preseason, no ramp-up period, nothing. Threw him to the Wolves. He could barely get out of bed the next day after his first game played with the Chiefs and was playing catch-up from that point on. Anyway, as of right now, some of you may be wondering, well, Cole, how the heck are the Chiefs even going to get cap space? I saw a video from a creator today saying the Chiefs are in cap hell. That's not even close to remotely true. But yes, the Chiefs do have roughly $5 million in cap space, and they need to make some moves to free it up. Well, if Kelce retires, that frees up around $17 million. You then have Noah Gray under contract and Jared Wiley, the rookie who tore his ACL during the season last year. That's a pretty good tight end room. I don't know that you would need to draft somebody there, but that's not the point of this video. If Kelce retires, it frees up around $17 million, and even if he does stay for one last ride, I don't know that he's going to be your primary piece on offense, and I'm also not sure if his $19.8 million cap hit will remain that high. The Chiefs will also most likely work to lower Mahomes' $66 million cap hit. That's almost a no-brainer. They've done something similar to this almost every year since signing his deal. A Joe Thuney extension is a real possibility. That will lower his hit, and you can look at some of the other larger cap hits on the roster for 2025. Chris Jones, Jawan Taylor, Creed Humphrey, and or Drew Tranquill. You could then manipulate some of their contracts a little bit to free up even more cap space this season. Now, Chiefs owner Clark Hunt is typically more frugal, at least in the bottom half when it comes to spending cash, and the Chiefs are 28th in cap dollars currently in void years, so you can definitely utilize this more and still win. I mean, look at the Eagles. They have a piss ton of this, and of course won the Super Bowl last year. And by last year, I mean last freaking week, but it was the end of the 2024 NFL season, and we're now looking at 2025. Now, this does require more money to be spent, talking about void years and all that, but you don't have to be the Saints in that regard and be in cap hell every single year. The Chiefs can be more aggressive in this aspect if they would like, and it might even be worth trying to do this at this point in time based on how the roster is constructed. Aside from all the players I talked about in today's video, I do hope to see some coaching changes as well, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. We've seen a few defensive changes, but not on offense, at least as of when I'm recording this video on Monday. In case you missed it, I talked more about the coaching changes that happened and some of what I would like to see on offense from a coaching standpoint in Friday's video. So check that out if you haven't yet. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?